You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
What is going on, Los Angeles, and welcome to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network and live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you all for being here, for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it. You can find us everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Just look for Believe in LA Football or LA Football Show. Obviously, the website, LAFBnetwork.com. And on YouTube, we have 5 distinct channels. The main channel is just LAFB Network. And then we have all 4 of our teams, our team-specific channels. So you can go Chargers, LAFB, Rams, LAFB, UCLA, LAFB, and USC, LAFB. This is your Rams segment of the show to kick things off after a Thursday night clash with the Raiders. And what a fun game that was. If you haven't noticed, flying solo tonight, my better half, my great co-host, Jamal Madney, is on a much-deserved vacation this weekend with the wife. So you get, if you're on radio, you get a full 2 hours of just Daddy Dyrud over here. If you're on podcast, then, well, obviously it's still broken up between the 4 shows, but it's going to be all me this weekend. So we'll see if the voice makes it through. Show is always brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. BLEAV. You get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You got the Chargers game this weekend, the big Sunday night clash against the Miami Dolphins. You can bet on if you want. The Heisman is tomorrow. Get your bets in on that Heisman. Caleb Williams bringing home the hardware, hopefully. You won't win a lot on that bet because he is the heavy favorite. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say you will win. All right? Hit me up if not. But either way, betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. All right, so Rams, Raiders, 17-16 victory for your Los Angeles Rams. And maybe one of the most exciting 17-16 games I can remember in quite some time. And this is a game that had basically no offense from the Rams outside of 2 drives in the first quarter and 2 drives in the fourth quarter at the end of the game. Basically 4 drives of offense for the Rams, but just the storylines around it, the guys on the field made this, you couldn't script it. Here we are in Hollywood, Tinseltown. It was said many times on the broadcast, but it's so true. I mean, this is where stories are written. And what a story was written last night at SoFi amongst a very heavy Raiders crowd per what we all expected. Still a great Rams crowd, passionate fan bases on both sides, getting to watch and be witness the demise of the Raiders season as they are essentially knocked out of playoff contention. I don't think they had a real shot, if I'm being honest personally, but mathematically they were really in it still, had won 3 straight. And you have the Rams. Season has not gone how we wanted, obviously. I think the number one reason you could blame that is on injuries. However, the way this roster was constructed, being so top-heavy, if something like this happens, it was unsustainable. You look across the locker room at a team like the Chargers, have had their issues. We all know that. We'll talk about it later in the show. Dan Wolkenstein of Chargers Unleashed is going to be joining me for that. But they're still a 6-6 team because they have, to all their dismay, all their flaws, they have depth enough that they've been able to get 6-6. The Rams, in my opinion, have had more integral injuries, a la now their starting quarterback now has missed 3 straight games and done for the season. The Chargers offensive line obviously has lost some very key players, but the Rams have lost essentially every player, and they just didn't have the depth or the talent anyway. Their offensive line to start across the board was a much weaker unit, which is where that roster construction in the offseason really kind of is very noticeable right now. But we're talking about this game, and I wish Jamal was here because we'd have a blast time with this. We, on our pregame show, so just a few days ago, because this was a Thursday night game, we actually both predicted the Rams would win this game. We both predicted Baker would play. I think Jamal said Baker would start. I said it would take a couple series or maybe a quarter to get him in there. It took one series from John Wolford. Now, what I'm curious about, and I haven't heard yet, I haven't done a lot of digging, to be honest, just because this, to me, isn't a very big storyline, but I'm curious if after that singular drive, Wolford's neck injury just felt like he couldn't really throw, or maybe warmups indicated that it was like it was going to be a tough day at the office, or if McVay planned all along to get Baker in, but just for some reason maybe thought there would be added pressure had he started, let this team get a series or two in, let the defense get some reps out there, and then put Baker in, so it's not just like this tidal wave of pressure from the get-go. I don't know. I don't know why Wolford only played one series and he made the move, but it made for a lot of fun, made for a lot of drama, and hats off to Baker, man. I mean, here's a guy, very polarizing, hasn't had the career he wanted, has had some success, though. I mean, remember, and I know if you listen to the previous show, I'm repeating myself a bit here, but for all the downfall that he's had since being the number one overall pick, he has had some good years, did have some good seasons in Cleveland, led the Cleveland Browns to a playoff game, and was a Pat Mahomes to Tyreek Hill fourth down conversion away from potentially knocking off the Chiefs that year and moving on in the playoffs. He's had 30-plus touchdown seasons, 4,000-yard seasons. His teammates all seem to like him. I know he's polarizing in the media. He can come across as cocky. You know, if you look at a personality like Stafford or like even Justin Herbert, Baker's the opposite. But many places, specifically Carolina just recently, teammates all loved him. Class act, football guy. You know, he is who he is, but he's not like a bad dude or a bad person or a bad teammate. And he just fits in the Los Angeles landscape. Now, the majority of the show is going to be talking about, obviously, Baker and what happened last night. I want to make clear, though, at this point, with how much praise I will give him and how amazing that performance and clutch ending was, this is not to say that I think he should be the starter over Matthew Stafford next year. So Stafford, if healthy, is the quarterback of this football team. I just want to make that very clear. Now, if Stafford comes back next year, that's the big question mark anyway. So let's break this down in kind of 2 or 3 phases here. As of now, as of the offseason, let's say, or the end of this season, if he's back, Matthew Stafford is the starting quarterback. However, let's say Baker goes on a run here. He has no talent around him to speak of. I mean, no Cooper Kupp, no Allen Robinson, abysmal offensive line play. I mean, you have Ty and Secchi as your starting left tackle right now. Rob Havenstein had he's the staple of the offensive line now, but he had a pretty awful game last night, which many do against Maxx Crosby. That's how good Maxx Crosby is, so to be expected a bit. But let's say Baker goes on a run here. Not even wins every game, but just plays well, elevates the team. It looks fun again out there. The fan base gets excited around him. Well, I still think Stafford's the unquestioned starter next year, but you absolutely bring Baker back, 100%, at minimum a backup. But I think you kind of open things up in training camp. Not a true quarterback battle, because you don't want to go into that with 2 vets, one that brought you a Super Bowl, one that you traded 2 first-round picks saying, hey, your job isn't safe. But you kind of keep it a little spicy, keep it a little open. You have that in your back pocket at least. And if Sean McVay is back, I mean, it may be his last season next year. And I know he loves Matthew Stafford, but you want to do whatever it takes to win a Super Bowl to go out on top. After one performance, I'm not saying Baker's that guy, but if he goes on a run, let's make it interesting. Scenario number 2. Let's say Stafford does hang it up. Does say, you know what? Had a good career. Statistically, I'm going to finish, top 20 all time. Got my Super Bowl ring. Got my family out to LA. We got a beautiful house out here. My daughters are at the age I want to be much more involved in their lives and, on the golf course, maybe getting broadcasting or coaching or something in that fashion. I've had a lot of injuries in my career. Got banged up a lot in Detroit. I've been banged up a lot here in LA. A lot of concussions. Now this neck contusion. That's kind of a scary thing. Numbness in your legs. That can get you thinking. By football standards, maybe he's getting up there in age at 34. He's 2 years older than me. That's a lot of life you have left. And you want to be walking in that life. Now, he'd be leaving a lot of money on the table, but he's also made a lot of money. So I'm not saying I want him to do that, but those are going to be serious conversations. Kelly Stafford's wife has obviously been very vocal about her concerns around concussions and injuries in general. So it's a legitimate thought that he could say, I'm walking away. So then, now you have Baker as this bridge guy. Well, I'll say, okay, that'll be scenario number 3. So then you have Baker as, okay, we hand the reins off to Baker. We've seen what Sean McVay can do with Jared Goff. We've seen what Sean McVay can do with Matthew Stafford. Why not see what he can do with a full offseason with Baker Mayfield? That'd be 3 number 1 overall picks that Sean McVay could work with, but also 3 overall picks that would be elevated because of Sean McVay's coaching. He could see that as a fun challenge, but also an opportunity to bring winning back to LA. So they'd have to obviously re-sign him because his contract is just through this year, but that's another scenario. And I don't think they don't have a first round pick. So you're not getting a quarterback in this draft, in the 2024 draft. Like, you're not moving up to whatever, unless you're giving up 2 more firsts in previous years. And that team, I don't know if they're going to want to not have a first round pick this year. They would probably want to, if they move back, it would be for a first this year. Very unlikely they would do that. But never know. But I don't think that's the play. So if Stafford's gone, you're going into next season with either Baker, either another free agent QB, or John Walford or Bryce Perkins. Or if you get like a mid-range, like a second round quarterback, maybe a Hendon Hooker you can get in the second or third round or something like that. I haven't deep dived enough into the draft yet. I'm not there yet. So that's a scenario. Final scenario. And we'll say Stafford walks away again. Well, now you have Baker as a potential bridge quarterback for the 2024 draft. I think I said 2024. I meant 2023, obviously. Now we're looking at 2024. When our guy, Caleb Williams, enters the draft. And then you had Baker for a year, kept it competitive. I mean, maybe they win some games. Maybe they make the playoffs again next year under Baker. You can then, with your first, either move up, either by Baker's, and I'm not saying this could potentially happen, but just putting it out there in the universe. Let's say Baker had a Pro Bowl type season, which might be enough for the Rams to say, cool, he's our guy. No, he's still young. Remember, he was drafted in that Josh Allen, Sam Darnold draft class. The dude he was older in that draft class, being a transfer and whatnot, but, he's still a younger dude. He's shown us enough. He's the future. Or he had a Pro Bowl type season where you can now package him with a first and other picks to move up in the draft to go get Caleb Williams, your QB for the next 15 years. So those are kind of the options that now this gives you. And again, it's a 1-game sample size. But it was a fun game. It was a win. We haven't felt this way about the Rams in, 7 weeks since they lost 6 straight. So I don't know. Something to think about there, Rams fans. Something to think about. I don't want to talk about this the entire remaining time because it was said at almost nauseum last night. Anyone that watched the game on the broadcast, or I'm sure if you watch highlights or recaps or other podcasts right after the game. But I do have to at least mention quickly, and then we'll move on. It truly is remarkable that a QB could join a team 48 hours before a game and somehow have the breadth of knowledge, enough knowledge of the playbook to go lead a team to victory. And if you watch the game, obviously McVay had to shorten the playbook, but they weren't running like the same 3 plays all game. Like they were running different variations, different things, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the playbook. And maybe it's they have 6 different plays that the call is one word differently, so it makes it a little easier. I don't know. I know we've seen what it's like calling plays in the NFL, and it's like a freaking algorithm you're reading. It's unbelievable what these quarterbacks are able to retain and spew out. But it is just amazing. He was able to get on a flight, which he said on the broadcast he booked his flight before the Rams even claimed him, which is such a Baker thing to do. Get on the flight. You have 24 hours essentially. Sat down with Liam Cohen, offensive coordinator, and just started studying. Now I don't want to say we all, but we all, I assume, have been in school. Many of us in college, but high school, I'm sure people did this too. I was the king of this. Not success. Okay, king's the wrong word. I was the jester. Let's just say I did this a lot, but not very successfully. But you would, you have a final coming up or a midterm coming up. You didn't do jackass all semester, or at least I didn't. Rarely was I in class. And then, the finals at, let's say, noon on a Friday. So, 5 o'clock on Thursday night, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to stay up all night and study. Cram. I usually would go in, get a C on the test. Cool. C's get degrees. Got my degree, graduated. So we've all done that. But that's like doing that for a final of a graduation degree in a very hard, specific study course and acing it. Absolutely acing it. Phenomenal. I mean, the first drive alone, we saw some sparks. And then obviously the last 2 drives were beautiful. I mean, the worst thing about the second to last drive was that it took 9 minutes. It was felt a little too methodical, obviously, but hey, that worked out. Incredible. And the other incredible piece, and I got to touch on the defense before we take a break here, is he was doing this, and this isn't to throw shade at them, but he was doing this with Tutu Atwell, Ben Skowronek, obviously still Tyler Higbee, the big question marks surrounding running backs, and obviously the overstated offensive line. He wasn't doing this with Cooper Kupp and OBJ and Robert Woods or Allen Robinson. Or Van Jefferson, who's now wide receiver 1. Don't want to forget him. But it's crazy that he was able to do that with that talent, skill talent, and get the job done. It wasn't pretty all game, but they got it done. Got the win, and it was probably the best feeling win this Rams fan base has felt this year. And it was one of the best coach games I think Sean McVay has coached this year. And it was for sure one of the best coach games Raheem Morris has coached this year. In that second half, I want to reiterate this. In the second half, now I know in the first half, the Raiders moved the ball down the field at will, but hey, per diem, like all year, Rams clamped down. They go into the locker room after that interception, 13-3. With how much the Raiders moved the ball, it probably should have been 27-3. They got it done, and in the second half, they allowed 62 yards, 2 first downs. Davante Adams had 0 catches, and Derek Carr went 2 for 7 for 11 yards. That, let me mention, without Aaron Donald, without the best player on the planet, you gave up 62 yards, 0 catches to their best receiver, and a 2 for 7 quarterback completion percentage at 11 yards and 3 points. Remarkable. I know there's been a lot of shade thrown around the fan base at Raheem Morris, but everyone, please give this man a round of applause. Give these players a round of applause. Bobby Wagner balled out. Ernest Jones balled out. Jalen Ramsey struggled in that first half, but put it together in the second. Defensive line did what they had to do. Josh Jacobs got going here and there, but when they had to, when push came to shove, they got it done. Huge game. Love to see it. Can't wait to see what Baker does the rest of the season. Let Baker bake. That's the hashtag. We got to make t-shirts. Let Baker bake. Got to take a quick break. If you're on podcast, everyone enjoy. This is the LA Football Show. I'm Ryan Dyrud. Talk to you guys all next week if you're on the Rams pod, or talk to you at the bottom of the hour after the break.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.